more shorter than that. We like to water them the first year and sometimes into the second when you have a drought like we have right now, just to give them a really good chance to survive. When you see that little leaf come above ground, what do you think has happened below ground?
Same distance.
About twice to 3 times the distance.
Okay.
The root goes down first, and because this is an area and they're used to drought, they have to go down that much further to survive the first year and the second. So you had some questions. One of them is why do I do this?
Yeah, that was Daryl.
I like to see high school kids work. That wasn't the right answer, was it? Okay. No, you know, this is about trying to make sure that we have wildlife and a good variety of vegetation for many years going forward. The vegetation that you're standing on is mostly a combination of oak, some timothy. I don't see any, maybe some weed up there. They were brought in, they're non-native, they don't really belong here. We're not taking them out, but we're just trying to bring in things that are intended to be here that will survive. There are some species that really require flowers or seeds in the wintertime. So, you know how some of us saw that, you saw probably not just some oak seedlings, but you saw some buckeye seedlings? Well, the buckeye is the first tree to leaf out in the spring, very early, February now. And then it's one of the early ones to produce a flower. Very pretty vertical white flower. Everybody's got a lot of algae going on today, right?
Yeah.
Got a lot of flower out here. But a lot of it's also the grass pollen that you're walking through and you're kicking it up. So that is what's called the buckeye is called a summer dormant species. So we will water it through about the 1st of June, and then we'll just stop because it's designed to be dormant and so it doesn't need water in the summertime. Whereas the oak trees do need water going through until the fall. But using as an example the native bees, the honeybees that come from the Midwest, they hibernate in the wintertime. The native bee does not hibernate, which means it needs flowers year long. So when you see something blooming in January in the open space, that plant is really important for the bees. Similarly, when you get to August, it's important to have some flowers or other things, because if you don't have bees, if you don't have pollinators, what else don't you have?
Food.
Food, exactly. Those bees are absolutely essential for all of your tree fruit, from your citrus to your apples to your what we call tree fruit, pears, plums, and peaches. So this type of area is important for 2 reasons. One, this is a near permanent supply source of water. So you can come down here many times, and if you don't see deer, you will see deer tracks. And where you see deer, you will typically see, you won't see it, but there will be mountain lions nearby. And there are mountain lions that come into they don't stay here because there's too many people, but they will come in here at night and then leave. There's a lot of coyotes here. So it's a really good area for wildlife. Plus you see a lot of people doing, you know, hiking and mountain biking, and occasionally some people working on habitat restoration. Okay, you got to be careful with questions you ask me.
So what has been the most interesting thing you have experienced while working here?
Actually, it wasn't right here, but it was at a place called Bayberry Pond, which was the first time I went out with a group of students from De La Salle about 6 years ago. And we were planning, and there's about a 1 acre enclosure there, and Bayberry is a street, and it's actually not too far from De La Salle. It's one of the entrances into the Lime Ridge open space. And there's this enclosure there that has been, that we started, that a group of kids from De La Salle and I started, say 6 years ago, just with planting some acorns. And a couple of trees there that some of them are up like this were planted by that group. We were walking up and about ready to go in the enclosure. On the other side of the enclosure, there was a coyote. And where the coyote was like 50 feet away. Most of the kids had never seen a coyote before. So that's really what gets you excited when you see something like that. And you see people react to something that they see in the wild. They may have seen it in a zoo, or they may have seen pictures of it, but it's really different when you see it up close.
We also see occasionally bobcats, which are really cool. They're very shy, they're fast, you know, they don't stick around very long, but every once in a while, if you're out here, you might catch a glimpse of them.
Okay.
How many volunteers do you think you have in the course of a year here?
Here probably about 40. Open space overall probably easily several hundred.
And how big of
Now there's several other projects going on. A couple in Shell Ridge, one in Lime Ridge. And some of them have a regular group that come out like on every Tuesday. And they know they're going out every Tuesday and they go to a different place. But other times we do things what we call with one-time volunteers who might come, some of them might come out a second time, like Callie and Natalie over there. They were here once before. They helped plant a lot of native grasses. And so that's always nice to see when somebody comes back.
And how much of an impact would it make if you didn't have enough volunteers?
David, how much of this could we have gotten done today by ourselves?
Oh, it's so good to have you guys come out because you can't do it alone. You can't do it with a couple of people.
We might have been able to finish inside the elderberry enclosure. Now that took, Callie, that took you about an hour, hour and a half?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just came out of there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still a few missiles left.
Yeah. But they did a great job in there. So that gives you a sense. You multiply what you can do many, many times. I mean, you spend, David and I could come here and we could spend 30 seconds saying, well, we know what we're going to do and this is what we're going to do. And when we water, we'll start up at the top and we'll each have our jugs and we'll walk down the 2 drainages and, we'll accomplish most of the watering that way. But we know how to do that. But when you have a group like this, you can not only water, you can clear the area, you can put mulch on, you can get rid of a lot of the invasive weeds. So it's hugely significant what you accomplish with volunteers. Plus, the other thing, even though all of you are sitting here saying, you'll be asked later on, what did you do? Well, I removed some dirt around some trees, I did some watering, I did some weeding. Now, how many times when your parents ask you to weed in the yard, do you just jump up there to volunteer to weed in the yard? Now, it usually takes a pretty direct order, right? Yeah. My kids were no different. But you came out here and you worked as a group, so there's a social aspect to it as well, because you just get to talk with people as you're working. That makes it a little bit more interesting, and you accomplish so much more as a group. So, and then particularly with kids, whether it's high school or grade school, we never know what you take away from today, but we all believe that you'll take something away from today that you'll carry forward going on. That you won't remember this when you're 70 or even 30, maybe not even 20, but there'll be some part of your brain that remembers this, and you'll either say yes, I want to do that again, or but it's all good. So how are we doing? Another one or not?
What's your biggest environmental concern?
Climate change, without a doubt. There is nothing that to me presents such a great a threat to not just our living right now, but I worry about people like you, and I've got a 1-year-old grandson, and I just worry what's going to happen. So I think that's probably the greater, from an environmental standpoint, the greatest risk that we face.
In what ways does human impact affect this whole enclosure, litter-wise?
Is there any negative impact?
Litter, we're doing pretty good now because this actually doesn't get that many people. I mean, we get a lot of people that walk through, take their dogs through, or come down with their mountain bikes or hike, but they're all pretty responsible for what they do. The other thing that the city of Walnut Creek did last year was if somebody here hasn't heard about it, I'll be surprised, but we adopted a plastic bag ban. And a lot of people said, why did you do that? Well, on May 9th, in other words, just 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away, we're going to do another creek cleanup. And we've done the creek cleanup in the same spots for the last 25 years. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've measured the amount of trash. And when San Jose did this, the amount of trash that they picked up at the same spot dropped by 75%. I think that's what we're going to see this year. I think that's also why you're not seeing as much litter or trash in this area. You still see a lot as you drive along Ignacio Valley Road out through the open space. You see a lot alongside. So I think that's a real positive thing for the future. I think we'll see a lot less trash. Although I did pick up a couple pieces today.
Besides this, what type of work do you do over the course of a year? Or
You mean in terms of habitat stuff?
yeah.
I try to help out in some other projects. I do usually participate in the creek cleanup. I've done that for about 10 years. I'll be there at the beginning this year, but I have something else to do later that morning. I'm leading a walk because I'm leading a walk into Lime Ridge that day, so I can greet the people, but then I have to go lead the walk. From a habitat standpoint, that's probably it. There's about 5 of us that have projects, or kind of the leader of that project, and so I'm the leader of this project, and that takes a lot of time. You think about it, and then just like how the city brought a lot of tools out, brought some water out. It did a lot of planning to help this day. We also did a lot of planning, and so it does take some time. So other than that, I probably do the same things you do. If I'm hiking, I do a lot of hiking. I see a piece of trash. If I can, I pick it up. I usually try to pick it up at the end rather than the beginning. So, any other questions?
For those of you who don't know, Bob is Mayor of Walnut Creek. He's been on the City Council several years, providing important leadership to our community. And one of the things he does is get down and dirty and work at places like this.
This is the fun stuff.
One of the good politicians.
I try to keep that a little on the quiet side. But so, how are we doing?
I got one. What made you decide?
If you have any, that's too.
What made you decide want to work here? Why did you want to help out?
I started in the first part of the 90s, planting acorns with a fellow named Ralph Kretsch and another fellow named Dick Daniels. And I didn't do it as often. They did a lot. And so some of the young oaks you see, so that's how I got started here. I've always kind of liked nature and doing things, and I like trying to make things better than they were before. So that's how I kind of got started. It just grew from there. For a while, for 2 years, just like David, I was president of the Open Space Foundation. And that's a slightly different position because we were, as president, I was able to persuade the city to start the process of acquiring 22 acres of land that is now in the Acalanes open space area. And just at our last meeting, we acquired 5 acres of land in the Sugarloaf area. So we have 4 open space areas here. Sometimes I like to ask the question, but so this is Shell Ridge, we have Lime Ridge, Sugarloaf, which is down by Rudgear Road and 680, and then Acalanes, which is north of 24 and west of 680. And they all take a lot of time and attention. So, did you have a question, or you just?
Yeah. As someone who kind of sees the political system from the inside, do you feel like our political system will be able to combat some of the huge environmental crises we're facing?
What?
Yeah. Yes. And if I didn't, I probably wouldn't be here. It doesn't mean we'll do it the way I think we should do it, or the way I would like to